This is the podcast between an old school mentor and a digital mentee on managing and/or working with people, navigating a career, growing profits, and not killing your coworkers along the way. Now let's join the consultant, Hayden Shaw, and the millennial who fixes Hayden's iPhone, Seth Tower Hurd.
All right, it's the consultant and the millennial. My name is Seth Tower Hurd, entrepreneur, syndicated radio host, and occasional journalist. He's Hayden Shaw, who needs to stop fidgeting, or we're not going to see him on the video. Are you drinking out of a School of Rock cup, or what is that exactly?
Cat in the Hat.
Oh, it's Cat in the Hat. Well, I saw the big A, so I thought it was like the School of Rock after special thing going on. Hayden's helped over 30,000 managers and has worked with some of the biggest companies in America, and has also worked with a lot of small and medium-sized companies like yours. You can find out more about what he does at peopledrivenresults.com. Grab his free videos there. It may just keep you from losing one of your best employees. Go there right now. Just saw the, this isn't going to come out till next week, but we just saw the jobs report. Unemployment's down to 3.8% nationwide. You really don't want to have to be hiring in this environment if you don't have to, and you don't want to lose an employee because of a dumb situation. And then Brian Utter joins me of the Shine FM radio network, who I previously worked with, and then I'm continuing to help out here after about 6 years away in the digital space. So we're going to continue the trend of we're just not doing a podcast where we book authors that just say the exact same thing. And Hayden, I say that realizing that you've got a book out. I plan on doing a business book, so we're kind of throwing ourselves under the bus. But I also like I like the fact that whoever we have on doesn't have a set of canned answers already. I think that's what's really making this super interesting.
I like it.
Hey, did I leave Hayden
I have nothing
speechless?
to sell. I have nothing to sell, so I'm good.
Well, we started one episode where I said basically all millennial startups are idiots, and then Hayden's like, "You're a millennial that started a new business."
Good point.
I just wanted to clarify if you believe the idiot worked there or not. I wasn't disagreeing with you. I just wanted to see if you were I just wanted to see if you thought that was an appropriate hashtag. That's all.
Okay.
And as a person that has 6 pages of canned answers written up in a press kit, yeah, you're really irritating today.
So, well, Brian and I would say that if you've had any kind of media training, your job is to not be mean to the person, but knock them off of their thought train where they're just saying the same thing over and over again to get something original for the audience. Get them to be human.
You want to ask them a question that no one else has asked them.
Yeah.
They don't have the answer for that one.
Well, and I don't think it's like this anymore, but when I was, doing radio full time, record labels used to basically grade bands on whether or not they would say their name of their album 3 times in the interview. And it would just get really weird and awkward because they'd try to shove it in there. And so finally I realized that the best way to deal with that is just, hey guys, I'm going to mention your album 3 times so you're free. And then they didn't have to get weird.
It's just the different purposes of why you want to conduct that interview. They want to promote their stuff, and we want to talk about things our audience cares about, which is not necessarily their album.
Okay, let's go ahead.
We want to know their take on parenting and devotional life. And writing songs, no one cares about that. Sorry. Yeah,
and let's do a quick diversion here, and then we'll get back on track because we haven't really started yet. There's a book from the 90s that Hayden and I are going to do an episode just about business books you ought to read. But there's a book from the 90s that still is getting talked about a lot called 1,000 True Fans. And the concept was that in the music industry, if you had 1,000 true fans, those fans would spend $100 to $300 on average. This is in the 90s on what you were doing. Mm-hmm. And then you got a fantastic living. You're making $300,000 a year. You basically don't need anything from anybody. This model probably to the extreme would be like the jam band from the 70s, the Grateful Dead, who can just go out and show up anywhere because they've got people that are going to spend money no matter what, right? And so what Brian and I think are getting at here is that whatever your product is, what you're trying to do is create people that love it so much that they're going to show up, whether you're business to business, business to consumer. You're trying to find those core people and not people who are super fly by night that are checking you out because you're trendy or whatever. I would say that there are bands and artists who sell millions of records who have no true fans, because as soon as they're not super hot on the charts, they don't have anybody. Like, they're playing, and nothing against being an American Idol alum trying to make a living, but after I saw, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was on the stadium tour, right? And 2 years later, he was playing the Irish pub in Downers Grove, Illinois. So his venue had shrunk by about 10,700 people.
Well, they've created a factory out of the American Idol, The Voice. That's a factory that's just cranking out tons and tons of artists, and it's a huge publicity bump right at the beginning. But unless you're able to deepen the relationship with the fans, it's not longevity.
Yeah. I almost want to continue down this road for a moment. Maybe no. Let's talk management.
There's a good way to tie into it.
I think there is some management principles here, because when we talk about product launch and that type of thing, one of the things that I would say that the music industry could learn from spending some time in traditional business, because Hayden and I talk a lot about cross-pollination of your career. Like, people in nonprofits going to work in the for-profit world a while, coming back. People in the for-profit world taking a break, spending a couple years in a nonprofit. You're both going to learn something, right?
True.
And I would say that the traditional music industry model of you're signing 100 artists, 97 of them lose money and the other 3 pay for it. If traditional products were launched like that and they had to go to retail, they had to go to the trade show and go into the B2B market, most companies would run out of money really, really quickly. And so most people in the traditional music business space, not the entertainment business space, realize that they've got to put a lot more work into making sure they have a much higher success rate. And normally people who work in the music industry show up after college and that is their career track. Maybe they leave at some point, maybe they don't retire in it, but they don't normally cross-pollinate. Is that a fair assessment?
I would say so. The ones that stick it out, they will move up into different parts of the industry, but some are just in it for a season and don't make their way back. Yeah, and that's not to say there's not some brilliant people that I've met in that space. It's just saying overall the model tends to be we're okay with a high rate of failure and we'll probably just make the money up. It comes down to whatever you do. If you're not passionate about it, you're going to try to find something else you're passionate about. Yeah. Plain and simple. So let's go ahead and start diving into where you're at. So you and I worked together briefly, 2011, 2012, 2013, somewhere in there. And you had actually come back. You'd been out of the country, and then you came back and you got into management, and then eventually you wound up taking the whole operation, over. So there's several layers there. First of all, there's the international layer of moving your family back from South America and readjusting. When I've been out of the country for a couple of weeks, it's been hard for me to come back. After getting back from Ecuador one time, I walked up to the counter at Subway and ordered in broken Spanish, and they were very confused. And they probably answered you back, right? Yeah. Don't go to Subway in Bolivia, by the way. Their bacon is green. So. Ew. Also, don't order a pizza in Ecuador. You'll get food poisoning the last 3 days, and you'll get stuck in Miami. Just saying. Oh, I've had good pizza in Ecuador. I don't know. You just had a bad experience there. Okay. But nonetheless, the international experience is totally worth it. People think it's a huge sacrifice, but what it does is it allows you to raise children in an environment that drastically alters their worldview, and I think for the better. We can be so ethnocentric here in the United States because we know nothing else. If you've not traveled outside the United States, you know nothing else. And I think that should be something that is required of every student should have that international experience. Yeah. It will change you. Yeah. And
Brian, are you saying because the newspapers have one page of international news in the very back that we are isolated to our own country? Yes, I would say that. By mentioning and the print edition. And that one page is not all correct.
By mentioning the print edition of a newspaper, Hayden, we just jettison the whole millennial audience. So. So let's get into a little bit, going into management and what it looks like, because, and I say that as a compliment from somebody else in the organization has said that you really came in and over a period of a few years were able to build in kind of your own management style, your own leadership style, which aren't exactly the same thing, into a legacy organization. Shine's been around for 50 plus years. Is it 51 years this year?
We're in our 50s. This will be the 52nd year we're in right now.
Okay. And that can be hard to, Hayden talks a good bit about, change management. I'm sure he'll have some stuff to say there, but what does that look like? And that doesn't mean anything necessarily has been bad before. It just means when you take something over, it has to also fit who you are. Just like when I write for a magazine, it has to fit my own voice, the preferences of the editor, and it has to sound like it's coming from the voice of the magazine. Management and leadership are the same thing. You have to merge all these things into, basically a train that's going somewhere.
Yeah. You have to realize that every leader of an organization, and you will have multiple leaders over an organization's lifetime, has a different skill set. And I have a specific way of doing things that my predecessor didn't do, and the skill set that my predecessor had is nothing like the skill set I possess. And so a good leader will recognize that and realize I can't do it that way because that's not me. And so over the organizational years, 52 years, we've had different leaders through time. The organization has evolved. I mean, when you work within the media world, media is constantly changing. If you don't change with it, you're dead in the water. When it comes to my own personal, managerial ability, it was interesting because when I lived in South America, they have a specific managerial mindset, depending on the leader. I worked in a culture. I lived in Argentina, but my office and the ministry I was a part of was really a South American organization, and so you have leaders from different countries, leaders that grew up their childhood years, their teenage years under dictatorships. I believe that dramatically affects the way you learn leadership. If that's what you've grown up in politically, that affects your leadership style. And so I come in, and of course I'm the guy from the U.S. who that had to learn Spanish and has to learn culture and become a sponge and just suck everything in and try to learn as much as I can. But my team was international, South American, different countries. They all come at it from different perspectives. And they're typically used to almost that dictator kind of thing. That's not my style. My style is I'm a coach, team leader, and I develop a team, and I want everyone's input. When I taught classes at our school down the street from us, they're used to, in the educational system they're used to professor, lecture, we listen. Well, I threw them for a loop when I made them watch the first Lord of the Rings movie just to look at the different cultures involved and cultures working together. And they're like, we've never done anything like this in class before. And I want their input, and I want interaction, and I want it to be organic. And so it just kind of threw them for a loop. And so our organization, again, that's just who I am. I'm the person that surrounds myself with people that are better than me at what I can't do well. That's how you're successful. I have one of my guys who is young. He's millennial. He is an analytical brain like nothing else. He is constantly looking at the budget, at the operational nuts and bolts. He knows how to do it. That's why I want him in that position, even though I could be his father. That's okay. In fact, someone mistakenly thought he was my son one time, and he never lets me live that down. But you want people in an organization, and you create culture of organization by putting the right people in there. And there can be people that disrupt your culture, the culture that you've created. That's why you have to be really careful on the hiring process. Beyond skills, I look for passion, and I look for cultural fit more than anything, because it's going to be more successful in the long run doing it that way. It really will.
Hey, you want to jump in at all before I keep rolling?
This is good stuff. I just want to watch Lord of the Rings now. That's really all I got to say on this.
Well, I was thinking about the fact that when you're talking about the hiring thing, one of the worst things as far as if you're in management, if you're higher up in leadership, or you're in a combination of both, you're kind of in a mid-sized organization where, Hayden defines leadership as something your to-do list can't be done just this week. And that's a big part of your job. And then there is part of your job that you're still going out there and grinding and having, and you're still doing, the work yourself, right? But one of the things that I have noticed that's been a big deal is, when trying to shape the culture, is when a leader can't step up to somebody who's co-opting the culture. And I've seen this I would say in some way in probably almost every organization I've worked for, where somebody just says, I'm going to say it louder, or I'm going to cry, I'm going to get upset, or I'm just going to keep yelling until I win. And I'm actually not thinking about anything when I was in radio. I'm thinking about a couple other situations where I just was not able to get around that as an employee. I'm thinking about one work situation where somebody would just say to me over and over again, well, that's just not how we do it here. And it's like, well, how you do it's wrong. It's 10 years behind the times. But eventually, I just got frustrated and quit. And I think that if you, it's one thing to see that in a coworker and just go somewhere else because whatever. It's another thing to have, as a leader, have your organization just co-opted by something you don't want to happen.
Right. Yeah. And again, you avoid that situation by really looking at who you're hiring. Be purposeful and slow in the hiring process. And honestly, we've lost people just because we went too slow and they took another job somewhere. But we've had people that we've brought in and it wasn't a cultural fit. In fact, someone was brought in soon after I was brought in, so I wasn't involved in that process. I would have never have hired that person. Okay. And I knew it was not going to work, and it didn't, but I was able to fix that. A good leader has to make those kinds of decisions and fix those kinds of problems. Right now, we're at an awesome place in our ministry. I mean, our team is amazing. I've got a couple of positions that I'm working on right now. And again, we'll be purposeful and take our time. I mean, it took me almost a year and a half to hire our most recent hire, just because we were looking for that right person.
And Hayden, I think this is something we've touched on before. People think, oh, if I only had more people, if I had more resources. And a lot of times when you hire fast like that and just try to get bodies in there, you're worse off. You actually are worse off than not having somebody. It actually is worse to have the wrong person, because then you got to manage them and do their work and figure out if you're going to try to manage them.
Yeah, and about 5 different ways it's worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, you make things worse in a lot of different ways when you do that. And but it's like something my mother said to me. She said, being alone is not as bad as being miserable in a marriage. And you got to do extra work. You got an empty spot. We got budget. We have a need for a whole person. That's a lot of hours. But we'll share it. We'll make it work, because the wrong person showing up is a whole lot worse than nothing at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that's especially relevant this week when we just, when the jobs report is at the time that this comes out, it's a week old. We are in an era where people are going to be increasingly desperate. Yeah.
When the unemployment rate is that low, the hiring times go up significantly.
The hiring times go up.
The time it takes to hire goes up.
Okay.
Because there are fewer, oh, wow, that person's great right off the bat candidate. They're just a smaller number of people, and therefore takes longer to go through and find the right ones. And if you have more people, you end up going, online, hey, those are 3 people that look like exactly what we're looking for. When there aren't as many people, you just have to talk to more folks.
I would say, a previous organization I was with, what a couple of VPs confided in me that, one of the biggest problems that they had is they kind of kept they kept kind of squinting to make the picture look like they wanted it to look. And they were like, well, we thought it was the best we could do with the options we had, or the applicants we'd had. And so we kind of just pulled the trigger on the first one. And I mean, the negative ramifications of a bad hire in that particular situation were probably about 3 years of pain for the organization. And I would say that I actually think at least 2, possibly 4 other people left because of that person that the organization didn't want to lose. They would have
covered 2 of the 5, Seth. So, hey, we're going to do an episode on just that, how to hire, and what do you do when you do it wrong. Brian, I think that's great advice, to build a culture with your hires and not just fill spots. What are 2 or 3 other things you've done to build culture? So one of them is Lord of the Rings. I'm still liking that.
Hey, guys, I'm going to plug in my laptop, so you guys keep talking. I'll be back in 30 seconds.
Yeah, one of them is Lord of the Rings, so I like that. And then this idea of take your time, get the right person in the right place. What have been some other things you've done to build culture, especially in an organization with some history to it?
Well, there's several things I've done. One, there was no specifically defined mission or vision or even value statements for our organization. We're a unique situation in the fact that we've been a ministry, which is what we are, for 52 years almost, and we're owned. Our parent company is a university. Now, the university, they have their own set of their purpose, their vision, but that's not what we are. I mean, we are a separate entity, and so I just think defining that right off the bat, and it wasn't me coming up with it. Again, I have a team, and I coach the team, and so we do a staff retreat every summer. In fact, Hayden's going to be a part of our staff retreat this summer. And one year we sat down and we defined mission and vision, and those are the same mission and vision we use today. The following year is when we did our value statements, that part of that culture is we had nice posters created. Graphic artists did them for us, and we have these posters in every room in the building, every cubicle, every office, there to remind us that everything flows through that. That staff retreat is a part of our culture. We bring people in and they teach us things and they lead us through exercises, but that also gives us an opportunity to be together in the informal setting and have fun. We purposely schedule time during that retreat to have fun. And I don't even like saying this, it's a radio station, but we're not a radio station. And I tell people all the time, we are not a radio station. We are.
Yes, you told me that.
Yes, we are a people ministry. Our vision and our mission, they do not include anything at all with radio. We're simply building relationships, building connections that connect people to Christ and to faith. And so because of that, we utilize multiple platforms, radios being one of them. It's our largest, yes. Now, that's new. I mean, when they started almost 52 years ago, they thought we're a radio station. That's a culture shift for us because things change. Technology changes. The way you do things change. And if you don't go along with that, I mean, if you go back how many years ago now to Friedman's book, The World is Flat, if you don't adapt and roll with the changes, especially in the technological world that we live in, you're dead in the water. And I tell people all the time, if a radio station continues to think they're going to be an FM frequency anytime in the near future, and that's what they are, they're dead in the water. You cannot do it that way. And so, yeah.
Oh, no, keep going. I want to talk about timing after that. Keep going.
Sure. I was wrapping up, so that's fine. Now I lost my train of thought.
I'm going to jump in right there.
Go ahead.
I think that there's an interesting dance of timing between two things we're talking about here. One is building your own culture after maybe you get promoted, come into a new job, and the other one is the urgency of what the business needs to do to change, survive, and thrive. One thing that's interesting about the business Brian's in is that Christian radio is actually doing better when a lot of other traditional media outlets are doing worse.
Yes.
Or need to pivot, because what's interesting is that so many organizations have plenty of time to pivot, and then they make a last-ditch desperate effort, and then they go out of business. So
that's not a pivot. That's a lunge.
That's a what?
A lunge.
A lunge? Well, I'm thinking about the fact that, Blockbuster could have crushed Redbox and still been here as a very profitable company, and they watched Redbox happen for years and then tried to get in on it before they went down. I think we've talked about it on the podcast before, why Redbox and Netflix weren't a threat, an internal Blockbuster memo that leaked. And it was people like running into their neighbors at the store. They like picking up snacks, and they like reading the back of the box. You know what people like better than that? Pushing a button and having content right there, right? And so, organizations talk themselves into staying the way they are. And so if you're coming into something that needs to change, you both can't come in like a hurricane and, force your culture because of the change management thing. But then also the clock is ticking that if you don't make some changes, and you can be late to the game. Like I would say the new ESPN app, ESPN Plus, is amazing. I think that's going to pick up a ton of new people, myself included, because there's a ton of value for $5 a month. I'm a big UFC fan. They've got that. I'm interested in their soccer coverage. And ESPN is way late to the membership app game and have stayed in traditional cable. But you know what? They're doing it way before they're desperate. So in that case, they're fine. Like, should they have been there in 2013?
I think they're pretty desperate right now, actually.
Oh, do you think they're pretty desperate?
Yeah, I do.
Well, I know their TV ratings are down quite a bit.
ESPN has been talking, going back to millennials, ESPN has been talking the last 3 years about what do we do with the fact that millennials aren't watching sports the same way Generation X did, or even the older millennials did. And so they really are trying to figure out how to re-engage younger millennials in their content.
Well, and what's funny there, when we're talking about new versus old, platforms here, one of the reasons that I want to get the ESPN app for $5 a month is they stole my favorite podcaster from in the MMA world.
Interesting.
So, before it would have been absolutely the exact opposite, right? Like the major league guys, they are the biggest names because they're on ESPN, not because they're on a free platform. And now it's like, oh man, the free platform's killing us, so we got to get one of these guys over here. Hayden, can you speak to that change management thing? Like if you're coming in and you got to change, and and also you can't destroy things.
Yeah. Well, I think Brian's described it really well. We still do radio. It's one of the things we do. And now Seth Tower Hurd is doing a digital podcast. So now we're involved in digital things. And we're expanding the different ways we get content to people. And the basics are still there. We have to talk about things our audience cares about. We need to expand our audience. And we can't undercut what is still the probably the thing we're most known for, and maybe the technology that more people still utilize. But when it tips, it doesn't take long to tip quickly. And Brian, to your point, ESPN is experiencing a bit of that. They're not as worried about people my age. They're a lot more worried about people my son's age. And my daughter. My daughter's just not into sports, or I would have mentioned her. She played soccer because she thought that the shorts were cuter than the ones you got for baseball. That's how my daughter determined sports as she was growing up.
That's nice. I like that. Yeah.
So you've been in, and by the way, you've been leading the organization for how many years now?
Are you talking to me or him?
Yeah. Sorry, to Brian.
4 years.
4 years? And how long did you, if you had to estimate, how long until you'd really implement the major changes or the major culture shifts that you wanted to do?
The culture shifts happen over time, and it happens subtly. Like you said, you don't want to go in and change everything and destroy it. It doesn't happen that way. Major changes of removing pieces that don't fit anymore. It took about a year and a half.
Yeah,
year and a half before I did that and put in the right pieces. And but the culture shift, you're working it all along, and as you're making that shift, you will then notice the pieces that don't fit will stand out more, and it's quite obvious.
So once you get
I really like that. Matter of fact, I got to make a note of that because I'm making notes for a book on change management, and that's a great way to say it, Brian. Is the leader often has a vision, and the leader can see that the not fits are standing out right now, but the rest of the team doesn't see it because seeing it, believing, and the rest of the team hasn't seen it yet. And so the easiest way to do it is, instead of getting all wound up, a lot of leaders are like, I want it perfect. And I remember one leader, I tried to coach her, just give it 5 months. But if I know he's not going to make it, I feel dishonest not telling him. Give it 5 months and he'll know this isn't a good place. Right now, you're just Attila the Hun. And so just give it 5 months. But because other people on the team have to see it as well. Even if she takes that guy out because he's not a good fit, the rest of the team is like, wow, who am I working for? And so that's great. Often it comes faster if you are more patient with it, and the not fit becomes obvious. Seth, that's my little word on change management. But we got to talk about a big competitor in town. That's what I'm also interested in.
Okay. Let's do that as the last topic, and then we'll wrap up. So Shine has been in the Chicago area for 50 years, expanded into Indianapolis and expanded into Lansing, Michigan, which are two very different markets and stuck in both of them, which you may not know how hard that is to do unless you've been in radio. They're very different places to get a product to work for both things. And so then large competitor that seems to have nearly unlimited cash comes in, and what has that been like? Notice I'm not giving them free publicity by saying who they are.
Sure, absolutely. And it's not like they haven't been where we are. Okay, they just now have a better radio signal that is now in areas that we were the lone person. I mean, we owned it, and we were the only game in town, and now they're there. And so, and a lot of people are just like, well, now what do we do? Now what do we do? And I had people at other radio stations in the U.S. like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, why is everyone panicking? This shouldn't be the case. We've been here this long. We have a very loyal following. In radio, we talk about P1s. P1s are your super raving fans. They're the ones that share others with you. And the whole goal is to take P1s, P2s, and P3s and move them along. The P3s you're introducing yourself to, and you're getting them to like you, and you're moving them from P3 to P2. P2, they're regular listeners of you, regular consumers of your media. They're not raving fans yet, but you want to move them from P2s to P1s. The P1s are your raving fans, and like us, our organization is funded in large part by donations, listener donations. They're the ones that are making the donations, the raving fans. And so we look at what we can do that the others can't. And I don't even like to call other Christian media outlets competitors. We all know each other. We're all friends. We hang out together at conferences. The big dog is the big dog, and they've got endless resources, and they go anywhere, and they can go anywhere. But what can we do that they can't? We're here. We are here in your community, and we are going to purposely be in your community more and more and more and more and more. Not because we want better ratings, not because we need you listening, because we need listeners to fund this thing, but because, again, it comes down to our mission and our vision. Our mission is simple: build relationships that connect people to Christ. That's our mission. But how do you best do that? Well, you best do that by going to their community, setting up a tent, handing out stickers and pens and chapstick and spinning hula hoops around each other and doing crazy stuff. But then you also are there because you want to hear their story. You want to know what's going on in their life. You want to know how you can pray for them. And that's the difference when you look at media outlets, specifically radio or television. And we are completely different. Let's look at that at the non-Christian side of things. Why are they doing what they're doing?
Profits.
Money.
Yeah.
Profits. They have stockholders. They're a corporation. They have stockholders. They need ratings. Ratings equal higher ad dollars, equal higher money. because they want money. They don't care about their audience. They don't personally care about the members of their audience and what's going on in their life. We do. And that's what sets us apart. That is why we exist. That is our mission, okay? So when it's Christian media, we all have this ultimate goal of sharing Jesus Christ using radio waves, television waves, websites, whatever. That is our ultimate goal. We all do it differently. Okay, and we purposely do it differently. We might play similar music. We have a different philosophy of programming, those kinds of things. But for us, what sets us apart when we're playing a lot of the same music, we care about you. We're right here, and we see you at the grocery store. We want to be in your church on a Sunday. If you need us to help you do something, then let us know. That's why we do what we do. That's the main thing that sets us apart.
Brian, I'm an old man.
Yeah.
And there was years when I was a young man, there was a time when Avis got a lot of investment and put on a huge push to be number one, to overtake Hertz.
Yep.
Discovered that. Not only was it not fun, but they made a lot more money at number two.
Interesting.
And so they just said, we are going to be number two because it's more profitable, and it would take a huge amount of money to be able to overtake them, and there is plenty to go around because some people want a choice and an option. And there are things we do better than they do, so they simply figured out what they did better and put a spotlight on it so that people knew what their choices were. And, there are a lot of people who like listening to religious music who are going to punch between both stations. I don't like that song. I don't like that program. I now have a choice to pop over. And so they're going to go back and forth. And so being clear on your distinctives is so much smarter than going, how do we tell people that we're almost as good as they are? Yeah, and so that, it's just bad in dating. I was almost as good as the one she married. I was right there with the moving truck every time she had a new apartment. She told me twice that she almost didn't think of me as a brother. And so being almost as good as the leader isn't where anybody wants to be. So I think that part's brilliant. I also, for our listeners who are not religious, and like, oh wow, this is kind of a religious show. No, this is an organization that has a mission. And Peter Drucker, the father of modern management, he said one of the things that businesses can do, to Seth's point of going back and forth between nonprofit and the profit world, religious organizations have a level of mission that makes them tell a story that engages their tribe at a way that is deeper because the level of caring is deeper. And every business can care, but religious organizations have a built-in mission and mandate to care that is not of their inventing. And because you got donors, you have a different set of incentives. And so even if you're like, yeah, well, I don't run any kind of religious organization, we don't have donors, we got to make money. What kind of story can you tell based on your mission? And your tribe will know if your mission is a lie and your story is a lie, and there's a big, to what you did, Brian, there's a big money grab at the end of it.
Oh, and if I could boil that down more, even if you're only managing 3 people, and you're saying something out there that you're not backing up, your team's going to fall apart. I mean,
sure,
now we're
absolutely.
a little bit into the authenticity thing. If I can get back to that for just a second on the competition thing, as far as what can any of us do if somebody's a lot bigger, has a lot more money, I don't know that I can. I would say I could say I literally grew up on Shine. I was on when I was 19. Aren't
there child labor laws against that?
Well, and I was in drive time for about. For almost all the 10 years, right? I was on nights for a little bit. I was in drive time for morning or afternoon, which is kind of one of the coveted slots in radio for almost a decade. And, I even go back and forth on my own talent depending on how tired I am, because there's times where I like listen back to the show and I'm like, oh, I'm terrible. So I don't know how good I am or not. But what I know is that I just put in more hours, I think, than most people in the business. So I would do stuff like try to route around and drop off like T-shirts at a kid's birthday party in Northwest Indiana if their parents asked, and say hello real quick, or a graduation party or something like that, because people still talk to me, like 12, 14 years later, because I spent 15 minutes at their kid's like 12th birthday party because their kid liked the music, right? And so what it makes me think of actually is ancient history, reading a little bit about the Battle of Thermopylae, the legendary Spartan army, right? First of all,
okay, I'm not seeing the connection.
Okay,
here, so
here, let me do it.
It's up and by a 12-year-old's birthday party and the Spartan army.
Okay,
so let's see if you can stop in that hurt.
Let me do it. Okay, so the Spartans had no better equipment. They had no other advanced military tactics than anybody else, and they always had a smaller army. Okay, and the reason they were so cocky is because all they did was execute war better than anybody else. So I think it was Philip of Macedon said, basically, if you don't surrender, I will like burn your cities down, take all your money, kill all of you. And they sent a scroll back simply with the word "if" on it. Which has got to be one of the cockiest things in world history, right? But I'm just really inspired by that. All they did was execute. There was no additional strategy. There was no inventive thing. They just did what they did better, longer, and they won.
I agree with that, yeah. Longevity has a lot to do with it. I mean, there are other Christian media in Chicago older than us that have been around just as long as us. They, again, the primary goal is the same, but they do it differently than we do. And that's okay. That's okay. There was a research, I forget if it was Jacobs Media or another organization. They do a research thing every year, and they watch the trends of how it goes about, and I forget the score they use, but it comes down to passion. And when it comes to formats of radio stations, the format of the music we play, it's brands is what it is. So it's not just radio stations, like brand names of Coca-Cola, Apple, whatever that passion score is. This format of Christian music and radio stations we play is like the highest testing passion score of all these companies and their main product, their product brand. And that's because it's value-based. We share tremendous values with that audience, and their passion is deeper. We also do business underwriting, so we talk to businesses all the time, and we tell them research shows that if their business is mentioned on our air as in an underwriting announcement, even though we're not selling anything and doing the whole call to action, because they're on our air, one, we've vetted them, know that they share our values. Our audience, because they trust us and they have a passion for us, automatically will develop the passion for that brand. And it's fascinating when you look at that, that the effect that can have on people. They're passionate for us. It's the highest testing brand name out there is this format of radio station over all these products of these major Fortune 500 companies. And when we put people on the air, like if we put a little jewelry store in Cedar Lake, Indiana on the air that fixes watches, guess what? If someone needs to buy an engagement ring, then their store got overwhelmed just because people heard his little store name on our radio station.
And let me tell one more story in that arena, Brian, because I've been around long enough that I've made connections at almost every major media outlet in Chicago, right? And so I've talked to other people that have budgets that just like blow my mind, and they just blow through cash, and it's easy to think, man, if only I had that. Like we talked about, if only I had more staff members. But when the Great Recession hit in 2008, which you were not on the continent then, but there was one of the largest car dealerships in the Chicagoland, Northwest Indiana area canceled all their marketing and said the one we're keeping is Shine because that's got the best ROI. And and that made me realize that just cash does not build a brand. Spending a ton of money does not build a brand. There was another, I don't even know if this corporation even exists anymore, so I don't know if I'm stepping anybody's toes or not, but probably 2003, there was a Christian radio for-profit network that came in. They tried to just run ads towards and they would run ads for really soapy, trashy TV shows. It's not going to resonate with a religious audience.
Right.
And but they had a ton of money. They spent a ton of money on billboards. They had a ton of money. They bought TV commercials, and they were around for less than 2 years because the authenticity just wasn't there because the audience didn't believe them.
Yeah, and it's interesting that dealership you're talking about has supported us for 25 years, and This year is their 50th anniversary, and they're one of the top dealers for that car manufacturer in the United States.
We probably had to put a pin on it there just because it's a little longer episode than we normally got into, but I think we got deeper into we really got 2 episodes into one here because we got pretty deep into 2 different topics, one being change management, and then the other one being the not as cash rich competitor in the market. Hayden, any way you want to put a bow on this?
No, this is your episode, man, because this is your space, and so it's just been fun to join in and listen. And only my dog got tired, and I had to go put her out of my office because there were people who entered our home that she wants to sniff. And so this was great, Brent. I just love the story of building a culture and a culture that can continue on with the mission and not get freaked out when things change.
Yeah.
Maybe I would say that one of the big takeaways for me is when Hayden and I talk about a lot on here that we're a different kind of podcast because we're not trying to give you necessarily always there's 5 steps, and sometimes there are, but a lot of times business is getting up to the 3rd level of thinking, really getting above the problem. And the theme here that we can't give you 5 steps to do, but you ought to be thinking about is the relationship between urgency and patience. I would say knowing things have to change, but also knowing that if you do all that in 4 months, you're not going to have any employees left.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And, where the nature of our organization is that it does change because it's a university setting. So a lot of our students have a 4-year cycle. The good ones maybe a 6-year cycle if I pay for their master's degree, but then it changes over. But there are goods and bads to that because I have all these, I can pick the best, right, invest in the best of those students, and the best ones, like this young millennial I was talking about. He studied at our university. He was one of our grad assistants, got his master's degree. And I'm like, you're not going anywhere. I want you to stick around, and I had him doing this. He did so well at that. Then we promoted him again, It's a great benefit to have that. I mean, grow them yourself if you have to.
Well,
we could do another half hour on that.
Yes,
that's good.
Maybe that is another episode we're going to have Brian back for. Just to throw you the details here at the end. Once again, you can find out Hayden's stuff at peopledrivenresults.com. You got people, you got process, you got change management stuff going on in your organization. You can either thrash through it for years, or you can have Hayden come in and help you get a clear and concise plan that means you're not going to be bleeding so much cash and get you back to profitability and happiness and not being awake at night because you're so frustrated a whole lot sooner. My name is Seth Tower Hurd. You can find out more about what my company does at digitalprofitfarm.com. And then with Brian, if you're in the Chicagoland, Northwest Indiana, Lansing, Michigan area, and you want to check out Christian music, shine.fm, and you can check out the brand right there. Anything else that you want to throw out as far as kind of your personal connections or anything? Anything you want to connect people to?
Twitter, follow me on Twitter, Brian Utter. Brian with an I, Utter, Utter.
And we'll go ahead and put that on the show notes. And then the last thing is, if you want to go deeper, the Consultant and the Millennial Facebook group. It's really nice to be able to talk to people, sometimes outside of your organization, and get a different perspective, get some answers in a way that sometimes you just can't have some of those conversations at work because it's just too complicated. So you can check that out and get help in growing your career, your strategy, and your profits. This is the Consultant and the Millennial.
right, Jim, we do have to mention one of my favorite kinds of episodes coming up. You're actually going to be doing a coaching show where this is all live. You have no idea what's coming your way. Last time it was a college athlete and a Grammy-nominated songwriter. So you never know what's going to kind of get pulled out of the bag here. We've got another coaching show coming up actually next week.
Oh, I'm fired up about that. Bring it. I always like that because that's pretty much what I do every day. I log 6,000-7,000 cell phone minutes a month, and people call me on my clients. So I'm really not always sure what I'm going to get when I get a phone call. What kind of challenges are on the table?
Hey, if you you want to join the coaching show, we're not going to press you for any super personal details. If you want to be coached about career or sport or a personal situation, we're not going to hammer on you and say, well, give us all the gritty details. We're just going to let you tell your story, and we're going to see where Jim's knowledge of 30 years of working with some of the top performers in sports, entertainment, and business take us, and we're going to tap into his full kind of gamut of intuition, and it is one of my very favorite things we do on the Jim Fannin Show. You can join in. Of course, that takes a little bit of courage to raise your hand, so to speak, and say, hey, me. But you can do that by shooting us an email at askjim@jimfannin.com. That's FANNIN.
Also, use this same email, askjim@jimfannin.com. Use the same email with a show idea, or maybe a guest that you would like to have on the show, or maybe you would like to be a guest on the show. Maybe you have something to add that you believe our audience would benefit from, and who knows?
You may have an amazing story, amazing zone story, but we don't know unless you actually tell us. AskJim@jimfannin.com. Shoot us a message. This episode coming up is going to be a lot of fun.
Hey, Seth, I want to talk about our new sponsor, Distill Union. And less is more. That's been a hallmark statement at the Jim Fannin Show. Efficiency is part of being in the zone. And this company has done that with a wallet. It's done that with sunglasses. It's done that with a phone case. Keeping things simple. How many times have I had too many credit cards stuffed into my wallet? If I go on a trip, now I do want to carry some cash, I've got it stuffed, and there's a big lump in my hip pocket. That's not going to help my back, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and less is more. So the co-founder of Distill Union, one of the co-founders, Nate, so he got tired of the overstuffed wallet. So he set out to design one that could hold the same amount of contents, but in a smaller package, and it wouldn't. It could hold the same amount of contents, and it wouldn't encourage him to stuff his wallet full of business cards, receipts, and everything else. So he launched the company. Wally Bifold was the first product. It's their best-selling wallet out there because it allows you to carry the same amount of cards and cash, but it's a package half as thick as a traditional wallet. Now, it's the size of this wallet. It allows you to carry your wallet in your front pocket, where it's also more comfortable, and it's safer. By the way, I did I did befriend the world's greatest pickpocket, so he would not like the Wally bifold because I could hold it in the front pocket. So it is safer. So it's not only thinner, it's also easy to get to help organize your cards. And it's got two different pull-tab pockets. Most leather wallets stretch out over time, and that requires you to keep stuffing it with more and more cards. But with a feature that they call the Flex Lock, you're able to actually carry securely as few as one card or up to 12 and back to 2 without stretching your wallet. So if you want efficiency, you want safe, you want ease of use, check out Distill Union. They've got a lot of products, but this is a company that's trying to take what everyone has, make it simple, make it better, and it's definitely at a price you can afford. Check out Distill Union at DISTILLUNION.com. That's DistillUnion.com. And check out the promo code DistillUnion.com/FANNIN. That's DistillUnion.com, DistillUnion.com/FANNIN. I got to get my new wallet. I'm fired up.
Check. Can I just get a quick check from you, Jim?
Check.
Okay. Let's go ahead and get the big event, and then we'll
So let me summarize. How do you prepare for a major event presentation that's coming up in the next few days, the next week, the next month? B to A, work in reverse. So dress rehearse that reverse engineered timeline. The last thing I would do the day before the event is deal from strength only. I'd go over my strengths. Always have a plan, have strategy, have tactics, know how you'd like to open, and know how you want to finish or close the event. And then clear your mind. The reboot, we've talked about it on our show. It's just shutting your eyes, unhinging your jaw, relax the tongue, let it float in your mind, and just really turning your brain off. You're seeing nothing but a dark screen in your mind. That's keeping you out of the past. It's keeping you out of the future, and it's just calming you down, but it's definitely clearing the mind. And that same reboot tool, before you hit the first tee shot at the U.S. Open, I would say this to Dylan Meyer, and have said this to Dylan Meyer many times, right before you walk up onto that stage, it's a reboot, but I call it clear the launch. Same tool, it's just used at a different time. Clear the mechanism, clear your mind. Surrender to the subconscious mind that you've been programming for some time. And once you do that, now you can focus on the very first task at hand. And at Shinnecock at the U.S. Open, that first task at hand is a hula hoop-sized target on hole number 1. You're sitting there with a driver in your hand. That's all that matters. And now it is one shot at a time, one play at a time. And that's how you get ready for a major event. Lastly, if it's a 4-day event, I would have a very swift evaluation after day 1, day 2, and day 3. You can have a larger one after the event is over on day 4. But on day 1, 2, and 3, I would have that evaluation swiftly, and then I would go to sleep very positive, and I would only be thinking about my strengths as I drift off in the last 30 minutes before the second round, the third round, and definitely the final round on Sunday, the 4th round.
And, if you are doing this for work, right, and sometimes there are industries that 3-4 day trade show, that's where most of the money comes from. That means you're probably not packing your schedule with gills in the evening with social events and people you don't normally see. You're getting plenty of rest, you're getting hydration, and then you're thinking about getting that business the next day.
Well, I've seen this happen to me on the Pro Tennis Tour, where all of a sudden here comes Wimbledon, and everybody starts changing their diet and how they're practicing, and we never did that. We wanted to treat it like any other event, knowing that it's not. But if you're eating cheeseburgers 2 days before the event, then I wouldn't start becoming a vegetarian during the tournament. I mean, you got to do what brought you to the dance. I think you should be eating healthy the whole time. The same thing with sleep. If you're used to getting 7.5 hours sleep, then the night before the event, you want to get 7.5 hours of sleep. And the day after that first day, that night, you want to be able to do the same. Try to be as normal as possible in an abnormal situation.
And up next, let's go ahead and get our guest on here. Fantastic conversation coming up about the U.S. Open and about how to perform during one of these really big events.
Well, I want to talk about my guest very quickly. I know we're going to get him to call in right now. My guest is Brian Mogg, M-O-G-G. Brian Mogg is one of the top golf instructors in the world. I met Brian at the David Ledbetter Golf Academy a couple of decades ago. Brian has his own academy. In fact, he has many academies around the world. I've conducted at least 50 golf in the zone schools with Brian Mogg. Golf Magazine Top 100 Instructors. And for my money, and there's a lot of great instructors that are good friends of mine, from David Ledbetter, from Mike Adams, Jim Hardy. There's some great instructors around the world. Brian Mogg is one of those unique instructors that is a player's player, really. He can still play. He's at any time he can shoot under par on any course in the world without a lot of practice, which is pretty amazing to me. But he gets it as a player. He's also helped someone prepare and win a major golf tournament on the PGA Tour, and that's why I really wanted to have Brian. We'll talk about Shinnecock. We'll talk about getting ready for a big event and what he does to get his player ready with his golf swing to showcase it on the big stage. So I'm looking forward to having Brian on the air.
Hey, Brian. Hey, how's it going? This is Seth with the Jim Fannin Show. So we got you here.
What's up? Are you driving?
Hey, before we get rolling here, man, how's the volume on your end? Are you okay? Can you hear us clearly? Okay, let me turn this up just a bit. Is that a little better for you? Okay, Jim, are your headphones okay?
Yeah. Let me tell you what I've said about you already. I've already had the introduction. The show is about how to prepare for a big event in your life. Could be a marriage, could be the U.S. Open, like Dylan Myers making his pro debut at the U.S. Open. That's a crazy time to have your first pro tournament, but it is what it is. And I want to talk a little bit about Shinnecock, but I'm going to bring you on, but I want to talk about, well, Brian, you've already helped someone win a major on the PGA Tour. That is not an easy feat at all. Tell me a little bit about that. And we talked about what to do the day before, and, how less thoughts is really everything we talk about in our golf school. So you can start right off talking about your PGA championship, and then we can talk a little bit about Shinnecock and how you're going to win the U.S. Open. Were you there in 2004? All right, great. Yeah, just deal from strength on Wednesday. Less is more, and then clear your mind and see if it's humanly possible to have a good night's sleep. Right? It's going to air Thursday. Typically, we get it out Thursday a little bit after 12 noon. I'm going to try to get it out. So we're talking as if it's Thursday. Yes.
Yeah.
Is that cool?
You want me to bring him on? Brian Mogg, welcome to the Jim Fannin Show.
Hey, Brian. Brian, I'm